Jalen, Cammy.
Brandon said he took a shirt, with dog poop on it, and he grabs the shirt up, shakes the poop off of it, puts it on, and wears it. Who said they do that? It's an anonymous guy. I'm not going to say their names. Okay, that's fair.
Just so you know, this is being right now is being screencasted, so you just got your poop comment on.
Well, at least they're not saying names.
Kind of crappy.
Is this still being recorded?
Yeah, it's going to be recorded throughout this whole period.
Okay. All right.
I'll need it for people who are not here today, which are several. You should do it.
Yeah, I know there's a bite.
Oh, those
Oh, I can't wait to see it. Have you done that football game? Anybody playing? I don't play football. I don't know about it. Play this. It's got long hair landscaper. Just play this. I don't know. No, I don't. I think so.
great, isn't it?
Hey man, what? Don't say anything stupid. You should screencast the file. Video of what we're saying. So just don't say nothing stupid. Yeah, you walk in here like, oh, this hoodie got poop all over it, so we took off, put back on.
No way.
Okay, so this is being right now is being screencasted. It's being recorded, so because of all the people that are absent. So just remember that too. Not that I expect there to be anything here, but okay. So we have talked about mostly politics and economics in this class so far, and I wanted to change it up a little bit because there's other things out there to talk about, right? I'm interested if you have any things in the art world that you want to talk about. Let me know. I've ever given you some possibilities of things we could do, but like this is pop psychology, and in fact, I put it right here on the board: pop psychology. There is a personality test out there right now that is all the rage. Like universities and businesses are using it right now to try to give people understanding of who they are as a person, but also like advice, I guess might be the right word, on how to mesh with the people they're working with. Have you heard of the Enneagram? Nobody's heard of the Enneagram? And that's okay because we're going to learn more about that. I'm planning Thursday and Friday for that. Actually, Thursday, I think my wife is going to come in and talk to you about the Enneagram. Trust me, she's a lot cooler and nicer and more interesting than I am. So good for you, right? And then I think Friday we're going to take the Enneagram. But what I'd like to do today and tomorrow is kind of give you another, like, it's a little history lesson, but it's also like another personality type that test that was developed for the Enneagram. So you should find out some stuff about you these next 4 days, today and the next 2 days. So what you have in front of you are some notes, and some of you have my class, and you know what I expect as far as notes go. That you fill out the paper as I'm going. Everything that's underlined up here should be in there. You'll turn this in for points. If you have all of them filled out, then you get full points, right? That'd be points for the day. So make sure your name's at the top now, because I will collect it. If you're listening online, you need to get the notes from me. Okay, having said that, we'll also find out a little bit about what your Keirsey temperament sorter personality is. A little bit. And we'll take the test tomorrow. Okay, so here we go. And actually, I taught psychology for about 10 years, so this is kind of in my wheelhouse. I really like it, so hopefully you'll like it too. But yes, that's all. Type A personality. When we're looking at the history of personality types, when we're looking at the history of personality types, this is one of the oldest types of personality breakdowns that there are in the field of psychology. It's not the oldest, but it's one of the oldest. Type A personality, by definition, people were worried in the 1970s about heart disease. What they were trying to figure out is what personality behaviors were more associated with heart attacks. Now, this shouldn't surprise us that it was in the 70s when this kind of stuff became really popular, trying to find out what's leading to heart attacks because people were having more and more heart attacks in the United States. And we shouldn't be surprised at that either because it was, what, the 1950s when McDonald's was introduced to the United States, right? And even though McDonald's back then was a lot more quality ingredients, the American diet took a downhill plunge and so did our health. So 20 or so years after McDonald's, we're having all this kind of stuff, problems. And so they didn't actually look at the health reasons for it yet. They were looking at personality reasons. And I kind of have a hunch that in the 70s, we still hadn't really figured out that there's a lot of things that we do to our bodies that causes the problems. Like, they hadn't yet made that connection between smoking cigarettes and lung cancer and, heart disease there too. So they're looking more at what type of personality traits would be an indicator that you're more likely to have a heart attack. So if you have these personality traits now, in the 70s, they said, you're probably gonna, right? So, having said that, and I'm not trying to make fun of heart attacks, I promise. But, if you have a type A personality, you are probably something like this. This is what they said in the 70s. That you are overly competitive. Isn't there a difference between being competitive and being overly competitive? Right? Like, there are people out there who they want to win. They don't really try that hard, though, right? I mean, isn't that like the majority of the athletes here with Circleville? Am I wrong? They just kind of do their thing. They go to practice, maybe. They put the time in, maybe. They want to win. They want to start, but they're not really that sold on it, right? Am I describing some of your teammates out there? Not you, but am I describing some of them? Right? I mean, I wasn't even that competitive, but I still would put a lot of hours in over the summer to try to get better at basketball. Right? It wasn't like first day of tryouts was the first time I played basketball for a long time. Summer camps and all that kind of stuff. Overly competitive, though, there's something different about that. That's like the person who's like, they're so intent on winning that if they get, like, if you're down, if they beat you down, they're going to step on your neck, make sure you don't give up. Right? I don't know if that describes wrestling, any wrestlers, right? It probably should because, like, if you don't pin them, they're going to get you back, right? But I'm talking like overly competitive. And not just that, an aggressive desire to achieve. Not like, oh yeah, I'd like to get an A, but a B is okay, and if I get a C, I'm not going to cry. No, it's like, I got an A, and I'm going to hide the books from you so you can't get them, so I can have them, so that you won't get the A, but I will. That kind of thing, right? I'm going to make sure I'm first in the class, that kind of stuff. And hostile attitude when frustrated. You know how some people, when they get frustrated, they just kind of like, right? But this is the kind of person who like goes downstairs, starts pushing a pushing bag, right? When they start doing push-ups because they can't stand all the stress that they feel inside of their body when they get frustrated, right? And don't talk to them when they get upset because they're gonna bite your head off, right? And it's not just these things; it's also this. Like, I've got to be on time. I can't be a minute late. Get there. Hurry. Am I describing any of you yet? Some of you? Maybe. I know my first period class isn't like this. My first period class was a lot of party people. Lots of party people. Not to mention anybody's brother in here. Not to mention anybody's. And it's not just a person who talks fast. It's they have an explosive pattern of speaking. Right? Especially when you get frustrated, when your time's urgent. It's like you go from 0 to 60 really fast. Right? Can you see why a person like this might have heart disease? Imagine all that. Just what kind of stress would you be under if that's what your personality was like all the time? And then a workaholic. I don't know if there's any workaholics in here. Some of you definitely are workaholics when it comes to current events projects, I can tell you that, right? This is a person who will stay late always, who will always have, like they're at the office like more than they should be. Sometimes I think I border on this because I want to make sure, especially during COVID stuff, when people go out, like I'll have my phone on me and I will literally like answer emails at 9 o'clock at night that people send me. Not 100% of the time. When we're pumpkin show, I try to slack off, but I keep that there because I want to make sure the students get what they need to get. And so, but it's not just one of these; it's like a combination of several of these, right? If this is you, then you are 2 to 3 times more likely to have a heart attack. That's what they said in the 1970s. That's what the research was showing them in the 1970s. If you are type A, you are more likely to have a heart attack. Now, type B is the opposite of this. And as you can see, it's much more chill. And this is how they divided up personality. Some people might have added a C or a D onto there, but that came later, and it's just like this wasn't a very sophisticated way of dividing up personality, right? Now, they actually found, as they did more research in the 1980s, that what I had just described to you wasn't actually type A. Those things weren't leading to heart attacks as much as they thought they were. So they tweaked the definition. It's still about heart attacks and what personality types are likely to cause heart attacks, but they modified it to include depression. That if you are depressed, that there's a more likely of an indication that you will have a heart attack later. And then they combined a couple of the others. Competitive and aggressiveness put together, that's 2 of the other ones from the previous slide. We did talk about easily frustrated earlier too. And they added also to this one anxiety. Depression and anxiety is something that was added in the 1980s for some people was definitely an era of anxiety and depression because it seemed like to some people in the 1980s, as awesome as I think Ronald Reagan was as president, right? Here he is back in the back of the room staring down the Soviet premier Mikhail Gorbachev, right? And he's a cold warrior, he's kicking the Soviets' butt. His America kind of allowed some people to get richer and left a lot of people out. Right? And so it's probably not a surprise that the 80s finds depression and anxiety to be there. But then in the 1990s, they redid the definition because that didn't seem to be causing heart attacks either. And the definition now talks about hostile or angry emotions that you might express in public, but you might not express in public. So if you're the type of person who gets angry or something like that, but you don't express it, you kind of bottle it in. Can you see how that could cause stress on your ticker? Have you ever heard of screen therapy? There are some people who, when they get like this anger, this rage or anxiety, they do push-ups or they run or something like that. And some people don't like that kind of physical activity. And so some therapists say you should go to a room, lock yourself in, where nobody can hear you, just scream as loud as you can, as long as you can. Your voice is hoarse. Yeah, it's supposed to get out some of this. I wouldn't recommend it, but some people That's what you do. And in the 90s, they said that men who don't show their emotions, and they were looking at men specifically, males who don't show their emotions are much more likely to have a heart attack. And I don't think that they ever have nailed down a perfect personality type for heart disease. Do you know what I think causes heart disease? Fatty foods and not much exercise. Right? How do I know that eating fatty foods and not much exercise causes health problems? Because I've got them. I've got a little extra weight on me. I'm like 27 pounds lighter than I was last Christmas, and I still have a lot of baggage here, and it's caused like acid reflux to the point that they're thinking about putting a steel ring around my esophagus to keep it closed. Right? And I should exercise more. See my bike's over there. I'm talking to work more. Right? But those kind of problems I think it's that, right? So I don't really put much stock into the type A versus type B personality types. And you can see here it's kind of like a continuum. Like there's very few people that are 100% over here, and very few people except maybe potheads who are really far over here, right? That's a joke. I'm just kidding because I know there can be angry, jerky potheads too. And some people are more close in the middle here, right? But it's a continuum. There are some jokes about this. You know, some people who are type A see a mountain and they want to climb it, and the only reason they want to climb it is because it's there. They got to beat it. So you can see the person's desire to achieve, and then the type B personality, like the mountain is like not something they want to conquer. It's just something they just want to sit and relax in. That's the difference of the type of personality. Obviously, there are pros and cons of being type A, right? You can get a lot achieved and a lot done by being type A. The cons of it are, workaholic, anxiety, stress, that kind of stuff. Type B has some good pros here, right? But you can get very, very unmotivated and complacent. You're okay to just stay where you're at, nothing, lazy, lax, right? So I would like to go to something else that was developed after type A and type B. It's called the Keirsey temperament sorter. It sounds a lot like Myers-Briggs. I don't know if anybody knows if they're an IFNP or INFP or ISTJ. Has anybody ever heard anything like that before? If you know what you are, then great. If you don't, we're going to try to, right now and for tomorrow, try to find out what's the more scientific personality type. And it's called the Keirsey temperament sorter. So in order to get there for you, let's actually, let me try to explain it, okay? And we'll take the test tomorrow. You are either, according to this, an introvert or an extrovert. And extrovert doesn't necessarily mean outgoing. An introvert doesn't necessarily mean shy and backward. Sometimes people look at, the people who are really outgoing at school and at parties and so on, and they're like the life of the party and they're just talking to everybody and so on. They go, oh, they're extroverted. Well, they may not be. And some people, see a quiet person and say, oh, they must be a real extrovert. Not necessarily. Because that's not, how loud or quiet you are doesn't determine whether or not you're introvert or extrovert. Or I'm going to call them E or I. The question is, where do you get your energy from? Do you get your energy from being around people? Or do you get your energy from being by yourself? Where do you go to get recharged? We'll get more into that in just a minute. Then there is an S or an N. S or N. Are you a sensor or are you intuitive? And here the question is, how do you like to have things proven to you? Through your senses or through your intuition? And if you don't know what that means yet, don't worry, we'll get to it. Then you're either a thinker or a feeler. What this is looking at is when you make decisions, important decisions especially, do you think your way through the decision or do you feel your way through the decision? And finally, this might be a little bit more like the type A versus type B. You can see they kind of tagged it onto the end here with everything else, but they don't call it A and B. Here's what they call it: judger or perceiver. What's your lifestyle like? And here's the thing: by the end of these notes, I'm going to hopefully have you to the point where you have decided what you might be. Are you an ENTP or an INFJ, or what combination of those are you? There's going to be four letters that you're going to end up being. You're going to be either I or E, either S or N, either T or F, either J or T, and you're going to have a combination of four. And Keirsey temperament sorter people, these psychologists who have studied this stuff, will tell you that if we know those four letters, then we know something about you and how you are as a person and what kind of people you can get along with and you can't. Okay, so let's get into this then, if you will. We're going to the E versus I. This is the extrovert versus introvert. Extrovert, try to explain what this means a little bit more. It's not about whether or not you like, if you are outgoing and talk to a lot of people and so on and so forth. You can actually be a quiet extrovert. What makes you an extrovert is, do you like this? And I don't mean your environment, like going out into nature. I mean, do you like people? Do you focus on other people? Or where do you get your energy from? Do you get your energy from being around other people? And if you do, then you're probably an extrovert. You like to communicate by talking, because talking usually means that you are with someone else. Unless you talk to yourself, which is not that weird, but the setting. Writing usually is something that's done quietly to yourself, and it's between you and you. So you would rather talk than you would write. You would rather have a conversation with a real person than texting or write them letters. If you're an extrovert, you would like to understand, to experience the world in order to understand it. So you act maybe before you understand. Like in order to understand, you have to act. You have to do. As a summary of it, and I'll give you a shortcut for that in just a second, but just for now, just kind of ponder, like, is that me? Does that sound more like me, or does this sound more like me? Introvert. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean shy. It's where do you get your energy from? You focus, if you're an introvert, you focus here. You get your energy from being alone, being with your own thoughts. You like to journal, you like to write, you like to sit and think, you like to go home and be by yourself, and when you do that, it makes you actually more energetic. And an introvert usually wants, before they act, they usually want to understand the world around them. So they think first as they're observing people and situations, and then they act. Whereas the extrovert would probably like to act first before, like, sitting and thinking. They want to do their thinking while they're acting. Now, before you decide whether or not you're introvert or extrovert, let me ask you this. After a party, now I'm not talking about, like, are you partying hard? Are you consuming a bunch of substances and so on and so forth? I'm talking about the people that are at the party, okay? After a party, do you feel more drained because you've been around people? Or do you feel more energized because you've been around people? If you feel more energized because people give you energy, then you're an E. If after a party you feel drained because you've been around people, then you might be an I. It doesn't have to anything to do with quietness or outgoingness. It has to do with the presence of others. If you are an E, will you If you think you're an E, if you think you tend to tilt more towards E, can you flip back to the front and up here somewhere put E? If you think you tend to be more of an I, just your guess, we put I there instead. We're going to collect these. Okay, we're going to put a series of 4 letters here. So E or I. Am I allowed to guess what some of you are?
Sure.
E. I. E. I. Surprise me. Actually, I can see that too. What do you think I am?
E.
E.
Naturally, by nature, I think I go home at the end of the day, even on days where like you all are working and I don't have to talk a bit. I go home at the end of the day exhausted because people drain me. Not in a bad way, just I just don't have enough energy. I would like to go home. My dream job is me writing. That's my dream job. You all stress me out. Not necessarily you individually, but just people, right? It's the way it is, right? Now, you're not wrong either, because as I become a teacher, this part of me has come out a little bit more. And it's definitely true that the personality can change over time. But just kind of like what do you think you are? Everybody got down your letter on the front? Okay. Now, in addition to that, you're either an S or an N. Okay. Last time there was a fight out there, I didn't go check it. That's the E kind of that. Let's get it to the X. Okay, S or N. Do you want to have things proven to you, or do you feel them in your gut instead? Are you a sensor or intuitive? Okay, if you're an S, you like to find out about the world through your 5 senses. In that way, it kind of makes you a little bit more quote unquote scientific. That doesn't mean that there can't be scientific in people, but that's the stereotype here. You want to learn about the world through touch, taste, feel, and smell, and sight. That's the other one, right? That you want to have information proven to you. Someone, if they're going to convince you of something, they have to show you, demonstrate it to you, prove it to you in black and white out here. Now, don't take this too literally, Redby, okay? This does not mean that a person who is an S is not religious. That's not what it means. What I'm trying to say here is, again, you have to have something proven to you. You can't just take something on faith, on somebody's word on it. You got to dig to find out whether or not something is right. If you like details. If in history class, when this is movie series, you report information, you test it, and find out these historical information. If you like that, you're weird, and you might be an S. You might be like me. If you're realistic and practical, meaning you like to think inside the box, you like to do things very practically, like in a way that's just down to earth, then you might be an S. Now, the N, oh, sorry, there's one more. If you like trivia, you like Kahoot days, you like quizzes and Quizlet and that kind of stuff, you would like to read through a law, you like to be a lawyer so you could get all these little facts and details down and argue it, and that might be you. Now, some of you are like, that sounds awful, and I hope I never marry somebody like that. And by the way, just so you know, like my wife and I, we're like opposites on a lot of these, and that's actually good, because even though we do get in arguments sometimes, but they're usually short and sweet, and we're over it afterwards, and we actually learn something from each other. You shouldn't marry somebody who's exactly like you, because that would just get. If you want boring, then marry your exact personality type, right? If you are intuitive, you it's got to be more than just the senses. That's going to get annoying. I actually remember that I put sound effects in this morning. I haven't taught this since I taught psychology at Logan Elm, and so I forgot that I put these annoying. Every single letter has a sound effect attached to it. So sorry about that, people that are listening online. Like the five senses aren't enough. Like you could show me if you're you could show me till the cats come home all the evidence behind evolution and so on and so forth, or behind why you should vote for this person or whatever, why you like this song. But like it has to be more than that. I have to see the big picture, not the small details. And I have to kind of feel it with my gut, not with my brain. So you kind of feel the truth. And I don't want to use that word feel because I'm going to talk about feelers in just a second, but maybe intuition is a better way to look at it. Ah! See, even if I click that, it'll just start going to the next one and getting more. Ah! Quit! Okay, there you go. I'm annoying myself. If you're more imaginative, more inspirational, if you're a person of faith, not science, like if you just know something and you just know it, you don't have to have it proven to you, right? And that could be religion, but it doesn't have to be religion. It's just like anything in life. I know that that person that I'm dating is right for me because I just feel it here. I didn't have to do like a, have to have an essay written to prove to me that this is the person for me, right? You think outside the box type of person. Now, before you decide whether or not you're an S or an N, let me ask you this question right here. Look at this picture. If I asked you what's in this picture, or what this picture is about, and your answer is, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parasols, umbrellas. I see there's a couple dogs down here. There's like 17 females, there's 13 trees, there's 2 sailboats. Like if that's you, then you're probably an S, because you like the details of stuff. If you look at this and you start to like make up a story in your head about what's going on here, something as silly as like, oh, look at these people. Look, they're married, and they're going out to a day on the beach on the lake, and they know these people right here, but these people don't know that they're coming, and they're going to surprise them. But the dog is going to give it away by barking. They're going to turn around and see him. And if you start doing that kind of stuff in your head, then you're probably more an in. Okay, now can you go in the front, and next to the I, can you put either an S or an N?
I feel like I'm both.
And if you're both, that's okay, because I actually test right 50-50.
I feel like I've traits of both. Exactly.
If that's you, that's totally okay. It's totally like it's natural. Sometimes you're right down the middle. You can just put S/N, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Did anybody feel like they were kind of 50-50 on the EI? Okay, so you were kind of too. And there's nothing wrong with that. The test tomorrow, I think, will sort you better, but you might still end up on the finish. Okay, thinking versus feeling. T versus F. This is our next 2. What is going on? Is it literally going to shoot a laser for every word, every letter?
It takes like 30 seconds for each letter. Oh, that'll take
I could, but I'd have to walk over there.
And that also wouldn't slow the time at all. Okay.
Oh, it's going faster. That's good. And younger me was a million. Let's go to the next one. Oh, it's getting faster. If this annoys you, you might be type A, and if it doesn't, you might be type B. Faster, faster. Okay, that's a little. Okay, if you're a thinker or a feeler, okay, so what this is about is when you're making decisions. If you're the type of person that likes to make a pro-con list on a piece of paper, you write out the pros and write out the cons, then that you might be a thinker. That might be right. It's all about logical thoughts, cause and effect, consequences, analyzing and weighing evidence. And a lot of times thinkers tend to have an absolute view of truth. Like there's a right and there's a wrong. And my way is right. Is the right way to think about it. Right? Very inflexible in that sense. And look, like some of you might be thinking, oh, that means all Republicans are that, right? Yeah, there are some. But there's just as many liberal people who are like that too. Like the way I think is the right way to think. So don't think that it's just don't pigeonhole people into one or the other. If you are looking at a problem and you can like immediately see what's wrong with it because you've thought through the logical consequences of everything, then you might be a T, you might be a thinker. Like literally, you come to decisions by thinking. And if you're a feeler, okay, you're right. I'm gonna have to make the long walk over here and turn this off. There you go, Grant. You don't. And I don't want to use the word feeling like you're emotional, like you're overly emotional, like you're like going from sad to happy to like depressed to like jittery or something like that. That's not what I'm meaning here. It's more about feeling. It's more about values. Because you don't make T charts when you're trying to decide, pros and cons. When you're trying to decide, you try to consider. I think this is. Yeah, I like this one. The way this one says it right here. How much do you care about something? How much do you care about the outcome? You might be more of a feeler that way. Like the logical cause and effect stuff, that's great for other people, but that's not me. I don't deal with facts. I deal with people and my personal investment in human beings. And whereas a T might be very rigid in what they think is right and wrong, a feeler might believe in right and wrong, but be sympathetic and appreciative of other people's, even if they don't agree with them. And again, not related to being like touchy-feely, like I'm really sad and weepy right now. I'm really happy in the next moment. Not like that, right? Maybe a better way to explain this is, let's just say that there's a woman who stole something from the local drugstore, some medicine. She's a single mother. She's pregnant with her second child. If you go through that, if you look at that scenario right there, she's stolen, and you say, here's what the law says about this, and I can find in this part of the law this thing that says, well, if she has to serve probation for 60 days, and you can't let her off the hook because this part of the law says this right here, and this is the consequence of this, and then the pro-con chart, then you might be a T. And if you look at this and you're like, oh man, but she, how is she feeling about this? How should I feel about how she feels about it? Don't I have sympathy for her? Right? Then you might be, and other ways too. Like if you say no, she should be let off the hook because I've set up this T chart, and the T chart shows me that she should be let off the hook, then you're a thinker. And if you say no, she should be put in jail, but you say it because you feel sympathy for the drugstore owner, you don't want him to lose his money, then you might be a feeler. It is the way that you go about coming to the decision. Now, can you go to the front? If that's good enough for you, are you a T or an F? Yeah.
What if it's like I feel for her, but it's like the law is the law. She should get her punishment. It's like I feel sympathy for her, but she knew what she did wrong.
I would go with the T on that because you came down on the side of the thinker. This is one where I am like 90% T. And it's not because I don't have sympathy for people, but when I go through making decisions, it's more about thoughts than feelings. 90%, like that's almost unhealthy the way it's delivered. Last but not least, are you a J or a P, a judger or a feeler? And this is about your lifestyle, your way of living, how you want to experience life in the world. You want to live in a planned, orderly way because you want to have control. You need to, like a judge who makes a judgment, come to a final decision, bang that gavel, and then it's finished, it's done, it's over. Are you like that? Structured, organized, one thing settled. This is not being related to like your judgmental of people. Is that you want to come to the final decision. You don't like things being left open. If you want to go on a vacation and you have to have everything planned out and organized, and the route, on the GPS exactly, and how many stops you got to make on the way, everything's planned out to the minute, you might be a J. If you're the type of person who likes to be more open and spontaneous and adaptable to the situation, and we don't need an itinerary for our vacation, we'll just go with the flow and stop wherever we want to stop, and if something looks pretty over there, we'll go explore it, then you might be a perceiver. And when you get that, now you go in the front and put J or P down. Leave that on your desk after you get the things filled out and after you get J or P down there, because this is worth points, and I'll take it and I'll put your points in. And I'll give it back to you tomorrow. There's Tony Stark.